Grace is 70. She's retired. She's previously enjoyed going for a walk as a recreational physical activity. Um, but she's progressively struggled with doing this. Like as in, it's gotten worse over time since her acute myocardial infarction, or AMI, as in 2014. From this, she had a double coronary artery bypass graft, um, which re-established coronary blood flow. But now she's been left with mild hypertension, mild left ventricular hypertrophy, mild mitral thickness, and moderate regurgitation. Which essentially all these combined together means that Grace is now living with congestive heart failure. The translation here for Grace, though, is that along with her reduced capacity to go for her walks, which she enjoyed, she's also losing the capacity for her general daily tasks, or ADLs, activities of daily living, such as like cooking and cleaning. And from this, she's losing, has a fear of losing independence and autonomy. So here we're going to break down congestive heart failure, as well as, and the pathophysiology of it rather, as well as other compensatory conditions, and also break down the initial AMI itself. So within the congestive heart failure, we've got left ventricular hypertrophy, which is essentially growth of the myocardium in the left ventricle, which causes a thickening and stiffening of the heart muscle. And therefore we have an increase in blood pressure, as well as making the heart less efficient at pumping blood out through the rest of the circulatory system. Then we have moderate regurgitation, which is the mitral valve not functioning properly, which is allowing blood flow back into the left atrium. This, along with the mitral thickness, further causes increase in blood pressure, and also makes the heart less efficient at ejecting blood out into the circulatory system. And then hypertension itself is caused by a sort of a combination of three factors. We've got the RAS system, which is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So this plus an increase in vascular stiffness and vascular resistance will lead to an increase in blood pressure. This is also influenced by various factors that are both genetic, which would be non-modifiable, and lifestyle factors, which are modifiable. The AMI itself, acute myocardial infarction, essentially is a blockage of blood flow in the heart that we get, and which will in turn cause a decrease in oxygen supply. If you have a decrease in oxygen supply to the myocardium, you'll eventually get heart cell death, and that's an AMI. So we want Grace to complete some structured exercise for her treatment of congestive heart failure and hypertension. But there are some risk factors and considerations we need to take into account before commencing the program. Namely, these are the three medications that she's on for those conditions. So we've got an ACE inhibitor, a diuretic, and a beta blocker. So the beta blocker is going to reduce her heart rate, and indeed her max heart rate as well, which is going to have an effect on exercise. Indeed, we won't be able to use percentage heart rate max as an intensity prescriber. Diuretics are safe for exercise, however we need to understand their impact on hydration because it's a water pill, and it's also may have an effect on her general exercise capacity. The ACE inhibitor is also a blood pressure medication for hypertension, but it is generally safe for exercise. With her condition history and smoking history, her level of fitness and training age is quite low, therefore we need to start with our training volumes and intensity quite low and progressively ramp up as she adapts. We also need to be mindful that because of this, her confidence is quite low, which you said before, and we want to increase that confidence and competence so that she can better adhere to an exercise program. We also need to be mindful that she carries angina medication, nitroglycerine, so that we need to take that in consideration when we prescribe our exercise intensities. So here we have Grace's goals. So we want to reduce her chronic heart failure and hypertension symptoms and measures. This is through three targeted measures of blood pressure. We want to decrease an increase in VO2 max and aerobic capacity, and an increase in strength and functional capacity. these three targets as well not only will help with her congestive heart failure and hypertension, it's also going to have a direct link with her ability to complete her activities of daily living and participate in her enjoyable walking that she likes. So our first practitioner goal of improving blood pressure, we're going to use a well-researched and well-supported method of training using isometrics. However, it should be noted that we're going to use a combination of training throughout the whole program, being resistance training, aerobic training, as well as isometrics. And there is some evidence to say that the concurrent usage of all these modalities at the same time might even provide superior benefits. However, both aerobic training and isometric training specifically will have a positive effect on blood pressure. As far as prescribing isometrics, we're going to use a 4x2 minute work interval at 30% of max voluntary contraction with 2 minutes of rest between sets, that is. And throughout the program, we're going to be able to test and retest max voluntary contraction within the movements. This is how, one, we're going to get an improvement in that absolute variable, as in that number of 30% is going to increase over time. Therefore, our training prescription will change over time. The other secondary benefit to isometric training is it's going to be easily accessible or a low barrier to entry exercise, and it will also increase muscular strength, which is also a desired adaptation that we're looking for in this program, particularly with lower limb and upper limb as well. There's a couple examples on the screen. I'll just run through one. So for example, lower limb, like quad and glute strength, is going to link to both her walking and her just general ability to get about the house. As well as grip strength is also a good indicator of overall strength, and it's also going to have a good carryover to her cooking and cleaning daily activities. So targeting an improvement in Grace's aerobic fitness using VO2 max as a measure is the next goal we're going to focus on. So an increase in aerobic fitness through aerobic training is a well-supported modality for the treatment of congestive heart failure as well as hypertension. As well as this increased aerobic capacity and VO2 max as well is also a good indicator of increased quality of life, and will also have a direct correlation with Grace's personal goals of returning to some recreational walking as well as improved ability to get through her activities of daily living. Specifically with chronic heart failure and hypertension, aerobic exercise is going to help lower blood pressure. It's going to have a mild improvement in left ventricular function, as well as improved vascular function as well at a physiological level. In terms of prescription here, for intensity, we're going to use the Borg RPE scale, which is what's recommended to use. Especially this subjective measurement is going to be better than using a percentage of heart rate max, especially because Grace is on a beta blocker, as we said before. So she's actually it's not going to be a good indicator of exercise intensity. We can also use her ischemic threshold to give us a heart rate target for her aerobic sessions as well. This will also manage any angina symptoms as well by staying under this ischemic threshold. Because Grace has got a low training age, she's not very fit at the moment, it's also very important for us to build her duration of exercise over time. So we're going to start with shorter bouts and build that over the 8 weeks. So our last goal that we're working on here is strength, which we're primarily using resistance training to increase. In populations with chronic heart failure and hypertension, such as Grace, we've got an increase in functional performance, as well as just a better prognosis for the future. So being generally stronger is a good thing for clients in these populations. But also, since she had the bypass, I would expect to see some muscle atrophy and weakening from it. So the resistance training is going to help strengthen and re-strengthen those directly affected muscles from where cuts and incisions were made, but also potentially other weakened muscles from periods of inactivity after the surgery. Increased strength is also going to have a direct link to Grace's activities of daily living, her ability to walk competently, as well as just her ability to do her cooking and cleaning as well. Both upper and lower body strength are going to help her there. It's also mitigate her age-related sarcopenia and osteopenia, because we know strength training improves this in aging populations. As far as prescription, one way we might deviate a little bit from the recommendations is, instead of using 1RM for intensity prescription, we're going to use RPE. Mainly this because, for practical and safety considerations, RPE is going to be more easily accessible and manageable for Grace, because we're not going to start at very high intensity, and we also don't have to test a maximal test, which again, with her training age and lack of experience, we may not get an accurate 1RM, and it also might not be as safe for someone that hasn't trained that much. And with volume, we're going to start lower, as I've said, and we're going to increase that over time, volume being the driver of hypertrophy, and then intensity being driver of strength.